Hi, I'm Rebecca Mander, and you are listening to the Bounce Mindset podcast. During my time as a busy mum and managing director in 2007, I managed significant personal loss and professional challenges as the only woman on the board. I believe we always have a choice, and that a resilient and what I call a bounce mindset is possible for anyone to develop. Join me as we meet some incredible guests, sharing their bounce forward stories, including my own in episode 1. I'm so excited to have you here, and also would like to thank Grow Radio Production and Stephen Bedell for Dragonfly, my very own theme tune. Enjoy. Hi there, and welcome to the Bounce Mindset podcast. I'm absolutely overwhelmed and overjoyed to be joined with Shelley Wilson, an amazing mentor and author. She is incredible. And I read her book recently over Christmas, actually. It is a summer theme, so very good for anyone who's about to go on a holiday. And the book was called Floating Solo, and it's one of many different genres that Shelley has. Fantasy and all sorts of different supernatural self-help books as well. So many hats Shelley wears, and I'm really excited that she's joining me today to talk about those hats. She has a writing membership, so really supporting people to help bring their story to life and really impact people across the world with their stories, embracing that vulnerability that's required to share a little bit about yourself. So whether it's offering guidance or sharing tried and tested strategies, she's a true champion of women's voices. Shelley, when she's not in her VW camper van, which I think is her best friend for a solo adventure, or possibly plotting her next novel, she lives in Solihull in the West Midlands, so not far from me, with her 3 lovely children and a cat. I think you've got cats, haven't you, Shelley?
I do, yeah, little Luna.
Luna the cat, that's right. So welcome, Shelley, to the Bounce Mindset podcast. It's so excited to have you.
That's such a great intro. I love that. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. It only took us 3 attempts to get there, so we got there in the end. And Shelley, you wrote a post this morning about spontaneity, and that's where we're going with this podcast, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do spontaneous action. I find structure or freedom in structure is what I like. So being spontaneous can push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, but this was a very special moment. So I just went for it.
Fantastic. And when you're writing, are you spontaneous, or do you find that planning is really a huge part of what you do?
There's a mix, to be honest. When I learned how to outline and plan, my productivity went through the roof, and that was how I ended up writing so many books. Before that, I was what we call a pantser, which is where you just, whatever's in your head, you throw on the page and hope for the best. So yes, I do a lot of planning, but as you start writing, anyone who has written or wants to write will find they suddenly, if it's fiction, your characters take over and they become spontaneous, and you're like, hang on a minute, I don't remember thinking that. And with non-fiction, it might be something you've heard that's inspired you, or a piece of information on the news even, or that'll suddenly send you on a little bit of a detour. So yeah, it's a beautiful blend, I think.
Wow, yes, I can see that. And that's very much the same with our clients. You know, it's great to be spontaneous and impulsive in our careers, but actually there has to be some kind of plan there, to a trajectory to keep coming back to, because we do go off course, don't we, quite often.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense, but it's much more fun when you can be a bit impulsive as well, isn't it?
Yes, that was definitely fun.
So let's follow that theme. I'd really love to hear your story. You know, you write so many different genres, and you help women especially share their stories as well as the fictional work that you do. Tell me your story, if you wouldn't mind. If I was to open a book, The Life and Times of Shelley Wilson, what would it be?
And as we say, I am an open book, so no pun intended. But yeah, I have been an avid reader since the what was it, Peter and Jane books back in the 70s. And I followed Enid Blyton up a magic faraway tree when I was about 8. And yeah, absolutely hooked. And I
Yeah.
think from a very young age, I was always filling little notebooks with stories and really bad poetry and making things up. And I loved the fantasy worlds because there were no kind of rules. It was proper escapism. And I really did love that. And I just wrote. I wrote for many years. I always remember when I was, I would have been either 15 or 16, and we were given an open creative writing exercise in our English lesson. And my English teacher was amazing. And randomly, she was also called Shelley. So bonded straight away. And she read mine out in class. And it was one of those, where you're dead proud, but you're also 16. It's like, oh my God, this is just so totes embarrassing. It was one of those moments. But then I was like secretly going, oh my God, she's reading my story out. And I think that was kind of, I want this in my life. I want people to be hearing my stories because this is just phenomenal. And so I kept on, I kept writing. I'd write for magazines, like try and get little star letters. I've won a few prizes, short story competitions I'd have a go at. And then I got married, had kids, got divorced, and that big chunk of life just took over everything. And I think my kids were like very young and quite close together. So I had no time to read. You just don't, do you? You're too busy doing what you've got to do. So that fell off a bit and I missed it. I really did miss it. And it was only when I got divorced that I found my way back to reading, and then that led to writing, because I think they do go hand in hand, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. But yeah, the writing picked up again. I think as I said, I wandered into Waterstones. It was, other bookshops are available, and I found the mind, body, spirit section, and I saw a book on the shelf that was called The Secret, which so many people know. And I remember looking at it and thinking, my entire life has been a secret because I've had to hide a lot of the trauma I went through when I was married. And I thought, I'm having that. I'm going to pick that up. And it was all about universal energy and the law of attraction. And it really hit home for me. And I'm just starting to rebuild my life with my children again, and all of these lessons in this book are going to help me do that. And yeah, that just kind of was a turning point for me. Randomly, I couldn't go back to reading romance or crime because I think romance I didn't no longer believed in, and crime was a bit too close to how my life was. So I ended up finding young adult and went down the werewolf and the vampire route and absolutely loved it, which is what I ended up writing, young adult fiction. And yeah, it was a huge escapism, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
And I got to
Yeah.
write as well. My characters are 16-year-old girls, always that age group for young adult. And it was almost like the 16-year-old I wish I'd been. So yes, they started off as the nerdy 16-year-olds and with a whole load of conflicts and everything, but they became these confident versions of themselves, and they found their true friends, they found their true purpose. And so it was almost rewriting my own life in a fictional way. And it's quite cathartic to do that, I have to say.
Yeah.
And
And
I've not stopped since.
interesting. Well, it's good. There was a big break. We'll come on to the break in a bit. But the 16-year-old, that's interesting. That's where almost this was born, wasn't it? That 16-year-old girl having her story read out. And it's a 16-year-old that you come back to and think about in your fiction books a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. I was a proper word nerd at school. I still am a word nerd. I'm proud of it. But yeah, I wasn't popular. I was just a geek. I was a bit loud and leery and tall and gangly and all the usual things. But I had big dreams as a 16-year-old. I think we all didn't we? I didn't know what my life was going to end up being, and I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change the bad stuff. It got me to where I am today, and what I've got as well, which is more important. So yeah, it's interesting to go back and kind of, I do write things I remember from when I was a kid, the usual schoolyard bullies that they make great, antagonists in a fictional novel. Anyone who's really annoyed you, you can turn them into a baddie. It's great.
Yeah, I had first-hand experience of those bullies. So I'd love to get my own back. That would be great.
Yeah.
And So as a 16-year-old, I remember you telling me you were very confident, you were very comfortable in your own skin. You loved creativity, you loved thinking about those characters, spending your days in a dream world, often creating. You married young, and it wasn't a happy marriage, was it, Shelley? And that shaped who you would become in your younger adult years.
Yeah, absolutely. I got married on my 25th birthday. Why I got married on my birthday, I don't know, because for many years after, it was
Oh,
always that
yes.
memory.
Yes.
And now I can enjoy my birthdays again, but
Yeah.
there was a period of time where I didn't. Yeah, and I thought it was forever. That was what I believed
Mm-hmm.
marriage to be. I think he was a child himself. So when the kids came along, my focus obviously shifted because I was responsible for tiny humans. He was big enough and ugly enough to look after himself, but apparently he couldn't. And I think that was where a lot of it stemmed from, maybe a jealousy, I don't know. But yeah, he just ripped my confidence away tiny piece at a time until I didn't realize that's what had happened and I was at absolute rock bottom. And my kids saved me. It's as simple as that.
Really?
They absolutely saved me in so many ways. And if it wasn't for them, it was a case of one particular day or evening thinking, I refuse to die and leave them with him. That was kind of that click. No, no, not doing that. No, they deserve better, and that's why we got out. So yeah, yeah, it was pretty horrific, I have to say, for a kind of seven years.
Yeah. And so, there's people listening that would be in that situation. They will have young children and they'll think, how on earth do I leave? It's much easier when I've got, we stay in our comfort zone, even though it's uncomfortable, it still feels more comfortable. And leaving that and going into the big wide world. And, what it was, that thought. And did you have someone to go to? Were you able to
I did, but I didn't
find?
go to them. And I think
Okay.
that this is the thing when you're in that situation, you drip told that you're useless, that you're no one loves you, that you absolutely, all of those things that you actually
Mm.
believe. If I went and asked somebody for help, they're going to go, "What are you talking about?" Because on the mask that we wore, we were the perfect family. We were attending happy
Wow.
family events and it was all very lovely. So how could I go and say, actually, that's an absolute lie? So I did have people, but I didn't go to anybody. And I wish, looking back, it's amazing, isn't it? Hindsight's a wonderful thing because when I look back, I think, oh, I should have opened my mouth sooner, but then I wouldn't have had two of my children. So
Yeah.
I'm like, but maybe I should have opened my mouth a bit later, when my daughter was born. But yeah, there's so many what ifs about the whole
Yes.
situation. I think, if I had my time again, would I do anything differently? Yes, I probably would. But again, that's knowing now where I am.
Yeah.
There are so many people who can help you. And I only discovered like things like Woman's Aid after I'd left. That wasn't even on my radar. So and I mean, now we've got social media, it's much more advanced, isn't
Mm.
it? There's so many things that you can see. You go to the toilet at the service
Yes.
stations and there's things on the back
Yes.
of the door now, isn't there? So there's more ways for you to reach out, even if it is to a stranger. There are people
Mm.
that can help you. And so,
Yeah.
anyone who's in this, I think, just have a conversation with somebody because vocalizing it is the first step, definitely. I always remember saying it for the first time, and it was like, oh my goodness, right, okay, it's out there now.
Yes.
We're going to go through this and work it out. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And your mum said she didn't realize how unhappy you were until she saw you getting better, so a
I think
secret,
she
as you
just
say.
thought my kids were 2, 3, and 5 when we left. So she just thought I was an overtired mom,
Mhm.
busy and doing all the rest of it. She just, because I'd not said anything, she just didn't realize everything that was on my shoulders. And yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. She was like, only when you started to recover did I notice how bad you'd got.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Wow. So big, brave move and a wonderful legacy for your children. That wonderful freedom that you created for them. But your confidence was rock bottom because you'd had over time. And when I'm working with clients, we talk about imposter phenomenon and confidence and self-doubt. And the messages that we receive, we don't, your situation was very severe, but all of us growing up have these messages that they embed themselves, and that can create havoc with our brain, let alone what you went through, where it was day in, day out. This is the message, this is the truth, this is all you need to believe. How on earth do you start to undo that? Where do you even begin, Shelley?
I think for me, the storytelling element comes back around, and it's something that makes me think I am destined to be an author, because it always pops up in my life. I honestly thought that I'm broken beyond help. That's honestly how I felt. We managed to escape. We were in this tiny little rented house until I could get back over to Solihull, where my mum and dad were, so they could support us. Once they knew, oh my goodness, they were literally there for us. They were just fantastic. I hadn't been allowed friends really, so I had nobody really to talk to. I had one friend that he allowed me to speak to because she was safe. He knew her, so he knew that she wasn't going to take me out clubbing to meet other people or anything like that. So it was kind of bringing people into my world who could help me, and that began at the school gates randomly. As we all know, when we're dropping off and picking up, you start to meet other mums, you start to bond with them, and whether it's the actual school gates or they're at kids club or anything like that, there's that community at school, which is always helpful. I also went back to work, so I worked for him for a while, and then I was at home for a short period. So I went back to work, and I think that was absolutely, my interview was quite hilarious, to be fair, because I sat there and the girls who interviewed me, the HR, one of them is still one of my absolute best friends now, like however many years later, 20 years later. And in the interview, they were like, and why have you left your last job? And I was like, oh, that's because my ex-husband is sleeping with the secretary. And they literally, and it just came out. I didn't think about it, it just came out, and they put their pads down. They went, no way. Oh my God. They ordered tea, and we were there for about half an hour extra. And they were just asking me all sorts, and I got the job. But because I'd been so honest about it, they were brilliant. They were so accommodating. They were like, start one day a week until you can build up, because we know you're transitioning from there to here with home. We know you've got the 3 kids. You're a single mom. We're going to support you. This was a brand new job. It was just amazing. And like I say, the girls that I met there are my absolute best friends still to this day.
Yeah.
And they're all
Wow.
10 years younger than me as well. So, I
Yeah.
sort of dragged them along for the ride. But I think they helped me build my confidence. And
Yes.
then reading. So reading those strong characters was like, hang on a minute, that used to be me. I was that person once upon a time. And so that also, with the real life stuff and the fictional stuff, it kind of just ever so slightly grew. There's
Yeah.
still times though now when I flutter. So, I spoke at the FSB because you were there speaking as well. And it's a mixed audience. So I work with predominantly women. I speak at predominantly female events. I can feel quite vulnerable when it's a male audience. Not for any reason, they're all the chaps that come up and speak to me are amazing. They're so lovely, but I know where it comes from. I know it's that authoritative male
Mm,
figure thing that
mm.
in my face kind of thing straight away. So there's still work to do. I know that, but yeah, piecing it all together one day at a time.
I do wonder if we're ever, you know, I remember someone saying to me, well, you can't be that cured or you can't be that healed, Rebecca, because when you look at this is after Charlie died, and I'd said that I had a friend who had a baby that was still alive, of course, and it was sometimes difficult to see that baby. And he said, well, then you can't be healed. And I felt like slapping him. But actually, what I explained was it's like a scar. It's the still, I wonder if we ever are completely, devoid of those feelings and those emotions, or are they just scars that are there left that we can work around? And I think I agree, the moments where I felt the most vulnerable, the most like an imposter, is when I've been in a majority of male audience. So those triggers, I think, yeah. But you've just come such a long way, Shelley, and you wouldn't have known it that you were nervous on that because you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're amazing. Oh, you always are such an inspiration to everybody else. When you were talking there were so many things firing off in that interview, the HR interview. There were two things that I loved about that story. One was that you shared your story. Now, you could have gone in and thought, I'm not going to share my story because this is a job interview and I'm just going to stick to you could have said, oh, I just changed my mind about the job, or something. You could have completely avoided that story. Yeah. Very quickly. You formed a bond very quickly because of your story, but also because of your willingness to be vulnerable. Yeah. And don't you feel that when people are vulnerable with us, that connection is made so much quicker?
Yeah, and deeper.
And deeper, absolutely. And yet we're so scared to be vulnerable, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in that instance, I'm a really bad liar. So if you ask me anything, I can't lie. So it was literally when they asked me, I was like, well, I can only give you the truth, and this is the truth. So it was very much like I really didn't think this one through, but it did pay off. But yeah, I think I talk about vulnerability a lot with my own writing clients because you have to be vulnerable to share your story. And that can be a fictional novel as well. You know, just because it's not your life story, your ideas, they've come from your head, they've come from somewhere deep in your brain and your soul, and you're sharing it with the world. So vulnerability hits people at different stages throughout the writing process. The first is before they even get going, where they have all those, it's all been said before, who's going to want to read my book, I'm useless, I can't do this, oh my god, I was bad at English. All of that comes up. And so to then get to that stage where they put pen to paper, you have to embrace your vulnerability and go, do you know what? Yeah, okay. English wasn't my strong suit, or yes, it's all been said before, but not by me. All of those things, then just sit down and write. So that's that first hurdle. Then you're actually writing. So I always talk to my clients about I can't swear on your podcast, but the first draft, the naughty first draft, crappy first draft. That's quite nicer. And it's like you vomit words onto the page and then we edit it later. That's just getting it out of your head. So a lot of them can do that, but some of them will get so far, then they'll start reading their own stuff. And of course, this is a first draft material. So of course it's going to be awful. But once they start rereading, they're like, oh, that's it. I can't write. All of those things come up. Vulnerability again. No, let's write through it. Let's get it all down on paper. Then we can start editing it. And I remember hearing I use it all the time. And I can't remember the author that actually referenced it, but she said, writing, it's like building a sandcastle. So you are shoveling sand. That's your first draft. And then when you go to do the sandcastle, that's when you bring the editors on and you craft this beautiful sandcastle. And I can visualize that. I'm just shoveling sand when I'm doing my first draft. So that we get over that vulnerability. They've got this beautiful book. Then they've got to put it out into the world. And that's when the biggest vulnerability ever comes about, because all of a sudden they've got to tell people that they've written a book, and they've got to promote this book for the rest of time, and they've got to stand there and hold it and wave it around, and their names on the front and all of those things. And I don't get that anymore. I think because I've written so many, I'm like, yeah, I've just written another one. Yeah, here it is, here we go. But I do get it, I do understand it. And it did come back when I published Floating Solo, because it was a genre I never ever thought I would ever write. So I remember having those feelings and suddenly thinking, Shelley, you've been through this a million times. Honestly, what's the matter with you? And then I clicked, because it's romance. If it was another fantasy, if it was a historical fiction, if it was self-help, anything like that I've done, I wouldn't be feeling like this. But this is a brand new genre. I have so many friends who are romance authors who I respect so much, and they are just brilliant. And they are bestsellers, and they just know their stuff. And I'm like, I'm entering into their arena. This is like, oh my goodness. And so, yeah, all of those feelings came back. And in a way, I'm glad they did, because I got to speak about them with my clients going, if it happens to me, you still survive. I did it. I just got out there and said, I've done it. And I will continue to do that. And it's opened a whole floodgate now for me writing more blooming romance novels.
Good. I loved it. Kat and Jordan, I loved it. So uplifting. And I get that. And how wonderful for your members that you felt that vulnerability. So you can really tap into that for them, can't you? You can really, empathize. And I think it's Maya Angelou, and she said, I've written 11 books, but every time I release a book, I get that, oh, I'm going to be found out. And, you know, we all have a little bit of that in us, don't we? And I think for myself, I think if I, and I often say this, in fact, I said it at the event that we were speaking at the same event. If I waited until I believed in myself, I wouldn't be doing anything. I don't think it's ever, I'm never going to be like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You can do this. I mean, I might for certain things, but for the big scary things, I'll always think there's someone better that could do it, or someone more equipped, like you with your friends. You know, they're the romance authors, they're the bestsellers. If we waited until we believe we're good enough, well, how much stuff would we waste, and how many opportunities would we never get?
Exactly. And a lot of people I speak to, I'll say, oh, you know, they'll straight away say, oh, I've got an idea for a book. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. Tell me about it. And they talk about it with such passion. I'm like, you know, how many chapters? Oh, no, it's not the right time. I'll do it. I'll start it on Monday, or I'll start it when the kids have started school, or I'll start it when I've got more time. I'll start it when this project's finished. It's always future, or we're always pushing it away because of that belief. I think it's actually, it's nothing to do with time, because, you know, I'm a single mom. I've got 3 kids. I'm running my own business. I'm speaking at events. I'm still writing a book every year because I make it a priority. There is plenty of time in the day to write. You know, one of the things I always say to people is that got me out of that not writing funk, if you like, was I know the script to the Friends episodes. I just know them off by heart. I've watched them that many times. I don't need to rewatch them again. That time where I would just sit in and scrolling or watching old shows, that's my writing time. That's when I can literally grab my laptop and write a novel and put it out there, and hopefully, you know, create opportunities. Speaking, that's where my speaking came from, because I've written books. You know, nobody would have known who I was otherwise. So it's, what do you want to get out of this? And that has to be your driving force. And if we can make it stronger than that, oh, if I, you know, I'll push it off, I'll put it off, I'm not good enough stuff, then you can work through it. And that's what I love working with my clients about, that accountability step of knowing that when they're having that wobble, all they've got to do is message me, and I will be like, right, I'll talk you off the ledge. This is this and this is that. And I love that. I love that.
And do you find that often people write in order to bounce forward from setback? Do you think it's a common method to use, methodology to use to try and move forward?
Yeah, I do believe so. I think you can turn trauma into fiction. You don't, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, when we telling our own stories or writing our own stories down. I, for one, I know I'll never write my domestic abuse story. It's no, not for me. There are people out there who can and will, and I salute them, and I will signpost anyone to them as well. But for me, it just wasn't right. But it can be massively cathartic for you. So what I did instead, I turned mine into fiction. So in my novel, I've got a werewolf novel called Hood Academy, and there is a scene where it opens. Should have a warning here, because I chop everybody's heads off in most of my books. But this is a warning where it's like this
in floating solo. No chopping off.
That was why it was so hard, right? You see, because nothing happened like that. But there's quite a violent scene. Floating down the cut. There's a violent scene at the opening of Hood Academy, and it was a memory. And I turned it into a fictional thing and put werewolves in it and all the rest of it. But it was something that, you know, that I could picture in my head when I closed my eyes. So that I could write as fiction, because I could make it up, because I knew the bad guy who was ex-husband. I knew he was going to get his kind of, you know. So you're in charge. You take control back. Yeah. And I love that. So, and I mean, journaling's cathartic. It's great to just get your thoughts and feelings out and work through it. There's something called morning pages in the writing world, where you just pour it all out of your head the minute you get up. And I think it's Hal Elrod does one for specifically for writers. That's massively healing, you know, even if it's just for yourself and not for anybody else, that's healing in itself. But doing it for a book, whether it's a transformational memoir, a non-fiction, where I've been through this and I can show you, you don't have to go down this, you can do this and it'll help, or you put it into fiction, then just do it. Absolutely, because it is such a healing thing to do.
Yeah. So your techniques are really have been, and Sheryl Sandberg talks about post-traumatic growth, where we have these awful things happen to us, but actually we come out of it, we grow out of it. We don't just go back to, I used to call my program Bounce Back, but it's not Bounce Back, because you're a completely different, evolved person. And earlier you alluded to the fact that you're quite grateful for your experience. It's quite an odd feeling, isn't it? And I'm sure if you had your time again, you wouldn't ask for that experience. But the person it shaped, that growth that's come from it, it's quite difficult as a human being to say, actually, I wish that hadn't happened, because if that thing hadn't happened, you wouldn't be who you are today, inspiring so many people around the world.
I know after I got divorced, I went to do night school. It was one of the things I asked my mum and dad if they'd watch the kids one night a week, because I just needed to get out and meet. You talked about that confidence, meeting people and doing that. And I just went to my local college in Solihull, and I signed up for an Indian head massage course, because I thought, oh, I'll get my head massaged as well as learning something new. How lovely. And it opened the floodgates. One, I met so many like-minded people there that were just beautiful souls. I've always been very spiritual. I've always been crazy about crystals and tarot and all of that kind of stuff. I've always loved that. So this kind of it opened a new world for me. And that is where I did a lot of my learning and a lot of my healing through, right, yes, this was traumatic, absolutely. But how are we going to turn this around? How are we going to make this into something that's made you who you are? And that was what helped an awful lot. And it started obviously again with grabbing the secret, understanding the law of attraction and all of that, and mindset. That was a big thing. And that's with the law of attraction. That's a huge thing with mindset. It's believing you've already got it and in the positive. And so I knew I wanted to create a better life for my children, a more stable life, a safe environment. And I had to think, that's what we've got. That is what we've got. And all of a sudden, the house was very calm, and they were very calm children. Yeah, God, we've had ups and downs. Of course, we have their kids. But, on the whole, they have turned into the most incredible adults. And I'm really proud of the four of us for sort of taking that journey together. Absolutely. But yeah, I think that self-help, that whole spiritual world was a massive tick in the box for getting me to where I am as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And you said earlier when we were chatting, you're a very glass half full person. That really comes across, taking that victor as opposed to victim stance. And that's hard, because in the victim space, everyone feels sorry for you, and they, look after you, and they make you cakes and bring you lasagna and flowers. And everyone's like, what can I do? How can I help? And in the victor space, everyone thinks you're just cracking on with it, so you're fine, and they don't ask you, but you do move forward, you get further, don't you, having that positive mindset that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think I know that I put a mask on, and I use humor all the time. A lot of people who know me well know that I'll use humor, so I will crack a joke at the most inappropriate time usually. But I have had a mask on, I have worn a mask on, I know that, and there's only very few people who have seen it slip occasionally.
Yeah.
So I know it's there. I know, like we talked about, it's still work to do. It's still there. But yeah, I will always take the positive angle, always. And my kids are the same. If they're having they've had a rough day or whatever, they'll find me and they'll talk about it, and they take the mickey out of me. Then at the end, they'll go, "Thanks for the motivational mum moment," and then they'll walk off with a smile on their face, because I normally end up making them laugh. But it is very much right. Give me something. Okay, that's really awful, but let's just unpick that. Let's just have a look at how we can turn that around to make it a lesson, to make it something that, yes, it's awful what you've been through, but actually, for me, it's like, I've got my kids. I got my three perfect children from that hideousness. Yeah, I bring it on. Absolutely, I'd do it all again just to have them. I really would. So there's always something. There is always something, even if it is just an inner strength. And it took me a long time to realize that happiness isn't external. It's in here, it's inside. And that took me a while. And when I did, it was like, okay, I'm all right. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. And I guess that internal happiness really is it, oh gosh, comes to the fore when you're in your VW camper van and it's just you and the camper van. I mean, that internal happiness has got to keep you going.
I look, Snoopy is my camper van. That's his name, Snoopy.
Oh,
And yeah, he's the best investment I've ever made.
yeah.
I had a camper van. I had a 1975 bay window way, way back 27 years ago. And we had to sell it because you could literally see the road through the holes in the cab floor. It was that old. So he's been on my vision board for probably 20 years. And I was always looking. I used to go and see them down in Bristol. And it was just in the middle of the lockdowns, and I was on Camper King's site, as I do, because I create like vision boards, as you know, and I sometimes have
Yes.
Pinterest boards. And so I was just, I'll just have a quick look. I'll just have a quick look, dreaming. And I thought, I'm going to ring. I'm going to just ring and say, what have you got available? And she says, oh, we've got nothing, but if anything comes up, we'll let you know. Brilliant. And then she rang me one day. She goes, I've got something in the shop at the moment. They're just doing the conversion. It's white. The interior's latte. I love a latte. So it was like, well, that was meant to be. And, can you come and see it? And I went to my dad, and he was like, oh my God, he rolls his eyes. And I said to my dad, I said, right, I know I can go and have a look, and I'll fall in love with it the minute I see it, but I need you to do the techie bits and kick tires and look at the
Yeah.
engine, because that's over
Yeah.
my head. So he came with me, and yeah, I think he fell in love with it as much as I did. But it's a 2017 T6, so it's a newer model. It's not
Yeah.
the vintage ones. And we've been everywhere. And I
Oh.
just absolutely love it. And I think because my kids are in their 20s now, they don't
Mm.
need, they're happy, they're doing what they're doing. So I will just, right, grab my notebook, grab my laptop, fill the fridge, and right, where am I going to go?
You go.
And I'll either go for research. So I've been up to Bamburgh to do research for a Viking novel that came out a few years ago. I've been to Whitby to do my research for my vampires. Drove up to Edinburgh. I've just been all over. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's to write, sometimes it's to research, sometimes it's just to sit in a beautiful place and walk. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's, like you said, he's my best friend.
Good old Snoopy. And a lovely way to fit your oxygen mask when you are such a busy human being. As you said, it's not that we don't have the time, it's that we don't prioritize the time. But I think prioritizing your own well-being and taking that space out for yourself is really important. And that having that inner happiness as your companion is a wonderful thing, isn't it? That you don't need to rely on other people to make you happy. You can do that just by yourself if you look deep enough.
I hope I'm teaching my kids that. I think I am, because I know my daughter does that now, where she knows she's got tools for when she's stressing about things. She's got her own strategies that she puts in place. So we both know Sandra. She talks about you can't be what you can't see. So I get that. I do that for not just for my kids, for my clients as well. I do it for them.
Yeah. So what's next, Shelley?
Oh my
What is
goodness.
next?
So I am working on book 22 at the moment, which is another romance. I did try and go back to my Viking novel that I had planned out, but I was pulled down the romance route yet again. So this one, I've kind of mapped it out to be a series. So it'll be more than one book, because I wasn't expecting Floating Solo to be such a success. That was my own inner thoughts.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm doing that at the moment. But in a couple of weeks, I'm also at the Romantic Novelists Association Awards, because Floating Solo is up for an award.
Oh, when
Debut romance. So that's in itself just blown me away. Absolutely blown me away. So it's exciting. That is exciting. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I absolutely read it. I was gripped. It was that lovely, the enemy into lover story. I was like, oh my God, it's so warming and cozy, and just loved it. I didn't want to put it down. So I can absolutely see why
good to hear.
Oh, it's so true. I can see why it's up for an award. It absolutely deserves it. It was just absolutely fantastic. And so for people who are listening and they think, I really want to get into Shelley's world, I'd really like to, because I know they'll be listening thinking, I want to hear more of Shelley. So where are the ways they can work with you?
So the first thing I'd probably say is I've got a free Facebook group, which is literally Start Writing Your Book. It does what it says on the tin. And we've got over 500 members in there. And that is where I'll do accountability threads. I tend to put in if any publishers have got submissions open, questions, ask me anything days, all those kind of things. So that's where you can get me for free, if you like, which is always a nice starting point, and see if I'm your kind of girl. And then beyond that, I've got my adorable membership, which I love, which is my monthly girls who we have a group coaching call. Once a month we have a co-writing session, which is brilliant, and then they've got a portal packed with all sorts of lessons and learnings and templates and everything in there. I do power hours because a lot of people I just want to pick your brains about this and this, so that's an easy one. And then I do 3-month one-to-ones for anyone who's really serious and like, right, I need to get this done,
this book done.
Yeah, so lots of different ways you can work with me depending on time, budget, whatever. But yeah, and then I'm on LinkedIn. Well, I'm on, I think, every social platform known to man, actually.
And actually, I was going to mention that, lots of people listening might not want to write a book, but need to write more posts and need to be out there more visible. Their personal brand could be out there. And that vulnerability, they battle that. So being on your Facebook group and following you on LinkedIn will help them understand, good content and how to overcome those fears around posting. Because as you said, that's the first, those star letters of the week were your first foray into writing. And it's the same for people who are blogging or writing social media posts, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Storytelling is storytelling, whether it's on a 280 word tweet or X or whatever they are, or a book. It's the same process. It's got to have a beginning, middle and an end. It's got to have a goal. It's got to have a theme. It's all the same. So absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I am sure that, I know the majority of people will find that you are their kind of gal, because it's just been so enlightening listening to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability in order to help others. And I really hope that people are inspired by your story, Shelley, and they can get in touch if there's anything they want to discuss with me. They can do that, and I will signpost them. We will signpost them to anyone that you feel might be helpful for them. But I think the biggest takeaway is that mindset, that bounce mindset that you've displayed time and time again, from being that 16-year-old that totes orcs, which wasn't even a phrase when we were 16. Let's not kid ourselves, Shelley. No one said totes orcs when we were 16. But yeah, what a lesson. And I loved the fact that when you said how proud you were of your children, you included yourself in that. I'm proud of us. And I think you have every right to be proud. And I'm really proud to know you, Shelley, and to work with you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing this podcast for the first time. I know people will be blown away. So thank you so much, Shelley Wilson.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Bounce Mindset podcast. If you would like a coach in your pocket with free regular hints and tips to help you bounce forward in your career or personal life, then please feel free to go to the Bounce Mindset podcast show notes. And don't forget to leave a review for us. Thank you. Bye.